In this next state, an 1878 dispute over a hog led to a blood feud between the Hatfields and the McCoys that lasted 13 years. It took government intervention and a public execution before peace was finally restored. Welcome to Kentucky, which became the 15th state of the Union on June 1st, 1792. With 4.2 million residents, it ranks 26th in population. It's called Kentucky bluegrass, but it isn't actually blue. What gives the grass its unique cast are bluish buds that emerge only in the spring. There are other things in Kentucky that aren't what they seem. For example, it seems that no one can pronounce the name of its largest city.
Well, how do you pronounce Louisville? Is it Louisville or is it Louisville? I think I say Louisville. Of course, I'm from Western Kentucky. They might not like that here in Louisville.
If you say Louisville, people know you really don't know much about it.
This city was named for King Louis of France, and despite him losing his head, we still call it Louisville.
Central to Kentucky's character is its ongoing struggle to define itself. Is it North or is it South? Actually, it's a lot of each. Consider that President Abraham Lincoln and Confederate President Jefferson Davis were both born in Kentucky, just 1 year and 100 miles apart.
Kentucky sympathized with the South and was a slaveholding state, but it didn't secede. And so typically Kentucky, it's neither here nor there.
I know in my home section of the state, in the Jackson Purchase, we have a statue of Robert E. Lee on the courthouse square. And so there's that southern identification. But then that would be different in Louisville and northern Kentucky, I think.
We originally had an image before the Civil War as being a western state. We are clearly a mixture of west and south, both historically and I think even in terms of our current identity.
No matter their geographical or political sympathies, all baseball fans make a beeline for this facility in Louisville, the one with the world's biggest baseball bat casually leaning against the side of the building. The Hillerick family's woodworking shop made its first bat in 1884 for Louisville local Pete the Gladiator Browning. Today, 60% of all major league players use Louisville Slugger bats. Many of them are custom made of white ash, a wood considered to have the ideal combination of strength, flexibility, and weight. Another homegrown Kentucky legacy is known simply as KFC.
Now there's another outrage. Kentucky Fried Chicken is now KFC. They took the Kentucky out of the chicken. Still the Colonel does.
There are thousands and thousands and thousands of Kentucky Colonels. Every member of my family is a Kentucky Colonel.
The Kentucky Colonel is an honorific award that our governor issues and makes you part of a very special guild.
Kentucky is special in many ways. It's the only state that has a piece of land completely surrounded by other states. The Kentucky Bend is about 17 square miles located on a hairpin turn of the Mississippi River. It became encircled by Tennessee and Missouri in 1811, when the great New Madrid earthquake shook so hard that it rearranged the geography of westernmost Kentucky.
And that little piece of Kentucky was separated by the rearranging of rivers from the rest of the state. And so there is a part of Kentucky that you can't get to from Kentucky without going to another state.
Traditionally, corn, coal, and tobacco were Kentucky's biggest sources of revenue. But a few farmers in bluegrass country prefer another kind of grass, which is now the state's leading cash crop. According to the Federal Drug Enforcement Agency, Kentucky is the third biggest producer of marijuana in the nation, behind California and Tennessee. If that doesn't get your head spinning, how about this fact? A company in Louisville produces 90% of the country's disco balls.
You can get them from like 5 inches up to maybe 18 inches, Disco balls are just amazing.
If you come up here at a bluegrass festival or come up to Rosine barn every Friday night and you start some of that disco stuff, they'd probably be polite, but they'd let you know real quick they'd rather you move on.
Far more popular than disco in the state of Kentucky his native son, Daniel Boone. His frontier exploits, including his exploration and settlement of the Western Territory that became Kentucky, made him one of America's first folk heroes. Perhaps his most celebrated act was later memorialized in James Fenimore Cooper's The Last of the Mohicans. In 1776, Boone's daughter, Jemima, and 2 other teenage girls were captured by a war party of Shawnee Indians.
Boone faced a real dilemma. What does he do? It's one of those choices in history. He can follow the trail and know that he's behind and he may never catch up with the girls. But Boone had the other choice. He thought he knew where they were going and he might be able to cut them off, to take a shortcut.
On the 3rd morning after the kidnapping, Boone ambushed the war party. Legend has it that he shot one Indian and drove off the others after a brief gunfight. The girls were safe.
Eventually, in 1800, he moved to Missouri and lived there the last 20 years of his life until he died in Missouri in 1820.
And Kentucky wanted his body back to be buried in Frankfort, the state capital. And there's some controversy as to whether Missouri sent us Daniel or somebody else.
Tradition is all important around here, so much so that one Kentucky tradition has become an American institution. It's the Kentucky Derby. In 1872, Colonel Meriwether Lewis Clark, Jr. traveled to England, where he attended the Epsom Derby, a famous race that had been running annually since 1780. Upon returning home, Clark organized the Louisville Jockey Club to raise money to build a racing facility in Kentucky. The first Derby was held in 1875. A field of 15 3-year-old horses ran in front of an estimated crowd of 10,000 people.
At the time of the first Derby, of course, the economics were totally different than they are today, and the first winner got probably less than $3,000.
It's not a 2-minute race, it's an all-day party. You have celebrities here, you have business leaders, political leaders, and they're all here supposedly to watch a 2-minute race. And it's the most magnificent 2 minutes that you'll ever spend.
Today, the Kentucky Derby is a $2 million race that attracts crowds of over 150,000 every year.
Whether it's Derby Day or any other day, the people of Kentucky share a reputation for openness and hospitality.
Oh, the friendliness of the people. I go home and I get hunned a lot. Go into a store, what can I do for you, hun? And here, you know, in Washington, D.C., you go into a store and you just kind of get a blank stare. Back home, you know, it's, hello, hon, how can I help you?